Good morning and welcome to the new era of agriculture commodity trade. Welcome to session 1, day 3 of Commodity Week World 2026 or CWW26. Just a visual and mic check. Neeraj, am I visible and audible?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Awesome. So thanks a lot for everyone for joining. So over the last 2 days, this global marathon has mapped out the complex structural transformations across the global maize, wheat, and rice corridors. Now, as day 3 begins, the focus turns to absolute epicenter of daily caloric sustenance for more than half of the human population. Welcome to the Rice Asia Pacific War Room. The agriculture value chain has crossed a critical threshold. The traditional playbooks, the one that relied on predictable crop cycles, stable freight corridors, and reliable trade alliances, have officially expired. Trade is no longer observing cyclical market corrections. Operating and running within the baseline of permanent structural volatility, the game has changed. Over the next 4 days, we already did two, 4 left. 18 technical sessions are planned. 6 we have already done. This is the 7th one. And we continue bringing the global boardroom directly to the screen through CWW26. CWW26 is organized by HnyB Tech Incubation and Know Your Commodity and is presented by AgriGuru Online and supported by CrypcoAgri, Bhajan Group International, and Bignani Group, along with association partners like OHA Myanmar, Ukraine Pulses and Soybean Association, and GOPKI Indonesia. Other institution partners include Solidaridad and World Cooperation Economic Forum. CWW26 is moving entirely beyond the delayed data of historic balance sheets and presentation. This is an unscripted, unfiltered war room. The mission is to democratize the high-stake market intelligence, mitigate the systemic risks of information asymmetry, and equip you with the foresight needed to defend your margins and ensure equity for producers and consumers alike. In Asia, producers are called farmers. As a reminder, these sessions are beamed live across multiple digital assets on LinkedIn, YouTube, X or Twitter, Facebook, and event website. The links can be found in the comments. Let's talk about the macro view. Rice represents the absolute baseline of global political and social stability. It is highly sensitive commodity where a single domestic policy shift, minimum support price adjustment, or export quota variation can trigger acute food inflation across continents. We saw this happening when India did the same. Globally, the rice balance sheet is operating on a razor's edge. According to the recent estimate, global rice consumption is tracking at record high of close to 525 million metric tons, while production at record low of 519 million metric tons. This continuously is outstripping our net productivity, which has led to creation of buffers and also the war chest. The persistent demand rate is projected to drop global ending stock to their lowest level in 6 cycles, down to nearly 165 million metric tons. With major exporting and importing hubs maintaining high as well as tightly calibrated export and import regimes, including quantitative quotas, tariff walls. But the buffer stock availability also is pretty high in some countries, while in non-producing destination, it is pretty thin. We are seeing in India, we are sitting on unprecedented war chest of excess of 40 plus million metric tons as buffers with government agencies itself. Out of that, in past, in fact, 5 million was even diverted to ethanol. Still, we are sitting with 40 plus million metric tons. When we talk about other trade players, in India, close to 30 million metric tons would be with other players. To understand where the physical trade risk is heading for the remainder of 2026, the focus must be placed directly on production heavyweights and export engines of Asia Pacific region. That brings us directly to our first panel of the day, the APEC theater, that is Asia Pacific theater, which is powerhouse, is export engine, and also is having a maze of policy metrics. Here in Asia Pacific region, the rice narrative dictates the global flat price and controls the physical availability of entire international trade cycle. This region does not just participate in the market, it domestic decision set the baseline metrics of the world. As you might be aware that 40% of global trade of close to 60 million metric ton is dominated by India. Let's break down the critical APEC pressure points. Yes, the powerhouse, India. India is having a lot of policy maze. India has been known for changing policy based on ensuring higher value to its farmer, at the same time also ensuring the inflationary pressures are low. managing world's most complex rice balance sheet, we have seen that the government buffers have played a very important role. And its position as a premier global supplier also impact global market whenever India takes any policy decision. The trade is micro-tracking government stock levels, green allocations for domestic welfare programs, and calibrated relaxation or imposition of export duties and quotas whenever there is a requirement. Any shifting policy signals out of New Delhi instantly forces regional millers and destination buyers worldwide into highly volatile procurement pivots. Second, the Chinese consumption, which is anchoring a huge amount of Asia's availability by absorbing that as imports. China remains world's second largest producer and the largest consumer of rice. They have a shortage of close to 34 to 42 million metric tons, and they sometimes do government-to-government deals as well as also buy on the spot. While Beijing consistently pushes aggressive domestic yield initiative and hybrid seed technologies, precision agriculture to increase its both acreage as well as productivity, but still it is a little bit away when it comes to the self-sufficiency. This lead to internal inventory management being critical, not just for China, which is having a humongous population just like India, but also for the global balance sheet. Now, coming to the third, the commercial export engines, which is Thailand and Vietnam. As the world's premier commercial export corridors, Thailand and Vietnam are navigating an increasingly high-stake environment. We are seeing challenges like high cost of inputs, which is ensuring that these two economies, they are not able to keep the price of rice as low as in India. So when India put the bottom floor, Thailand and Vietnam are known to be trying to top the market by putting a lid there. So India leads to reduced price, and the pressure from Thailand, Vietnam is pulling the price up. We have already seen that in past 1 month, there has been substantial rise of between 15 to 20% in global rice availability from these economies. So the days of relying on lagging monthly reports to make multi-dollar procurement decisions are over. Navigating this extreme volatility requires elite ground level foresight. That foresight is going to be extracted right now. An elite strike force of Asia-Pacific rice expert has been assembled. The panel features the physical merchants who manage cross-border flows, the macro analysts who model supply-demand deltas, academicians who will talk about sustainability as well as productivity, and the corporate decision makers executing large-scale procurement amidst this policy chaos. The mandate for this session is simple: no script, no filter, and pure intelligence. The session will dissect the Asian production as well as the possibility going forward and its impact on the global supply chain. To our audience, please do engage with our data, chat with us, and prepare to rethink your coverage strategies. The market does not wait, and neither should you. It is time to secure your strategic edge. Welcome to day 3 of Commodity Week World 2026. Let's officially open the Rice Asia and Pacific War Room. So awesome. We are having all our speaker. So let me invite my first speaker, Mr. Anupam Kaushik. So Anupam is an eminent corporate leader currently serving as the Managing Director of National Cooperative Exports Limited, NCEL, India's apex body for cooperative agri-export. He specializes in aggregating the output of millions of smallholder farmers to build highly competitive export-oriented supply network for rice and essential grains as well as other commodities. His expertise includes steering national export policies, designing robust supply chains, and building strategic partnerships between rural cooperative federations and international institutional buyers. Welcome, Anupam. It's a pleasure to have you, sir.
Thank you, Deepak. It's lovely to be joining this session and sharing whatever little experience I have in this trade amongst the doyens of this trade who are participating in this session. So I hope we'll start in a question answer format, or how would you like to go about it? Because I'm not familiar.
Okay, yes, we'll go in question answer format. But Unapam, if your experience is limited, I don't know actually where the world is going. Right, with such a, I would say, a diverse and extensive experience. It's experience is just not about like unidimensional experience. The type of experience you are having is phenomenal, from corporates to cooperatives, right? And I would say gaming both so well. So congratulations, like we are proud of the work you are doing. NCL is doing because at I would say center of my heart is always the farmers' welfare. And I believe NCL is single body which is ensuring our farmers are able to leverage the international profitability. And that's the first. Hats off to the Ministry of Cooperation, and hats off to NCL and to our honorable minister, Shri Amit Shah ji, for having this vision and taking it forward. So let me dive straight away into the first question, Anupam. So what is the operational blueprint for aggregating from smallholder farmers in highly competitive export-oriented supply networks, sir?
A very easy question, but very difficult to answer, as the question itself contains. So it is difficult, but once set up, it becomes a very profound and a giant of an apparatus, as we have seen it in the model of GCMMF, as we know it as Amul. And we have done it. So India has done it close to aggregation of now all the cooperatives are doing something as perishable as milk aggregation at the farm level, at the production level for approximately 18% of the nation's milk production. So it is doable. And that 18% is good enough to provide an anchoring to the price expectations, both by the producers as well as by consumers. So it is difficult to begin with, but it takes time. And once it gets entrenched, it goes on to build on itself, because farmers once realize the benefit of collective action, they support it, they own it, and they make it grow to the maximum extent possible.
Perfect, very well articulated. And I totally agree with you. Like, the type of work, looks simple. As you rightly said, the question looks simple, but the answer is difficult. Like the managing so many moving parts, and especially in a politically sensitive country like India, where a substantial number of people actually have a different food requirements, right? Down south, rice is so important. And that makes it difficult. And sometimes we, in hindsight, keep on criticizing government for various policy. But end of the day, in fact, like yesterday, I was with some of our eminent panelists from US talking about rice. And they ended up saying that India is a bad actor when it comes to global rice trade. I said, just try to feed 1.4 billion people. You'll understand actually what is a good and a bad actor, right? And try to see to it that 40% of workforce of India is in agriculture, with just you 3.8% of your workforce in agriculture are panicking, right? Just think about the scenario we are in. So I totally agree with you. So how do you see you build strategic, resilient partnership between rural cooperative federations and massive international buyers? And I know you have been traveling extensively from Africa to Middle East to Southeast Asia. How do you connect, those in the hinterlands of India to the elite international markets? And what has been your experience so far?
So, see, supply chains have been disaggregated in India for almost since the agriculture started. But I think it's time that the farmers create their own organization, which they have done with the help of the government. And we are a farmers organization because today we are owned by 17,000 farmers cooperative. And this number is likely to become close to around 65,000 in next 2 to 3 years as we are growing our stakeholder and membership profile. And that will give us access to close to around 60% of India's farmer households, farmer entities. So once we connect to them, we communicate with them that this is what the world consumer, the global consumer demand. This is what the Indian consumer needs are. And this is how you can partner with consumer in a feedback loop chain. Today, in a disaggregated, privately run supply chains, there is no feedback loop between producer and the consumer. A cooperative is an institution which completes that feedback loop, and the role of intermediation is limited, as the farmers are owning the supply chain themselves right up to the last mile to the consumer, and the feedback loop works in real time. So once this loop is established, the farmers are responding to the local and global stimuli in real time, and they are improving their production and processing and marketing and all abilities, as we have seen in some of the successful cooperatives. So it is about farmers setting up their own institutions with initial support from government, which is what the current design is all about.
So Anupam, now next question, again, it is very pertinent question, seeing the realities and the global posturing, right? We are in a crisis situation. And I would say that it's a foresight, vision, or luck, I don't know, that we are so lucky that we are having such a huge buffer of food, right? Because I always believe nine meals means anarchy. And we are having sufficient rice and wheat, luckily, that if anything and everything goes wrong across the world, for 2 years, we have no challenge. And I think nothing is going to last more than 2 years. So I think in hindsight, when I see this policy, it's extremely solid policy to have such a huge buffers. But at the same time, that also lead to challenges when we see the prices. Right, Indian rice has been quoted right in the lowest in the world for a pretty long time, just because of one reason: there is a huge glut. And according to you, how do we steer this national export policy in a manner where actually, we ensure that such a large nation is fed properly, inflationary pressures are not there, but at the same time, trade takes its own share of profitability, right? And I know NCL is also one of the traders, right? So how do you ensure your profitability is not impacted too much on the socialistic mindset sometimes?
So we have to see, Deepak, we have to look at agriculture in the way it is structured globally. Uh, Indian agriculture is not similar to the agriculture systems around which WTO has been formed on agriculture and trade topics. There are two models of agriculture in the world. One is the industrial scale model, which is what we see in OECD countries like Europe, Americas, South American, some giants, Australia. So these are the OECD countries, and those countries, despite being doing agriculture on industrial scale, their net the net income or the net economic support to the farming community is anywhere ranging between 12% to 56% of their revenues. So it's a huge number if you look at the OECD net economic support and compare it with the subsistence agriculture sphere, which is in which countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, many countries in Africa, many countries in South Asia belong to. And if you look at the net economic support to those subsistence agriculture nations, it is actually below cost of production. It's like, for example, India, the net economic support is minus 12%. So if you look at that matrix, I think that this the cry over India anchoring its farmers around the subsistence agriculture is not a very economically viable argument. So, coming to the profitability, my sense is that in subsistence economies, one has to look at the profit cycle over a period of 3 to 5 years and not year to year.
Perfect. No, I totally agree with you. Because this is where actually we have to understand, the different economics of different countries. In fact, yesterday I was having a discussion with the chief economist of ADM, and he rightly put a point that actually the global south countries, especially countries, giant countries like India, they should start thinking about not just feeding the rich, right? Our trade, if you see, that is structured where actually we try to push, if US puts a tariff, we are so worried, but if a Benin puts a tariff, nobody even talks about it. So his view was that actually, global south.
I'll hold Deepak. I'll just supplement my answer. Is that India's most of the India's agriculture policies around food is for national food security, but because we end up producing more, our national food security becomes global food security as well for global south. So one should look at in totality and not look at this transaction purely in trade terms and profit terms, because what we are offering to citizens of India eventually gets permeated to the other partners in this global south family, as in Africa and South Asia.
I couldn't agree more, actually. In fact, I was having a lot of engagement with RIAS and other think tanks on Global South. And believe me, the type of proud feeling you get when you engage with those in Southeast Asia and Africa, they look towards India that actually, you are the savior, right? And especially the type of work which we are doing and our oversupply of rice is ensure that actually, a lot of people, these low prices might hurt, some of the traders. But in Africa, they love it because after all these crises, if just think a scenario, if price of rice would have been $700 a ton and then you had $200 of risk premium, right? You would have 15 million people not getting the food, Right. So in hindsight, like, as you rightly said, it is about the global food security as well. And India has been dying and a champion of ensuring that. Now, that brings me to another very important and pertinent question. See, NCL, as you rightly said, that in the structure we are in India, also act as a shock absorber for the farmers, right? So that they get the right price at the same time. When there is surplus, there is a way out. Do you think that actually this model, right, along with the parallel private sector model, right? And there has always been a little bit friction when the private sector, that it's a canalization. But we have seen even Indonesia now thinking on those lines. So are we setting for the global south a model that this could be a better model than the typically the capitalistic model which has been run in food sector for so long?
It would not be prudent on my part to answer it in black and white. I will give you a gray answer. If you look at the source of supply for the rice export going out of India, I think the any observer or any astute reader or observer of this current supply chain will say that canalization would be a preferred route to maximize the economic potential of the supply chain.
Very diplomatic answer, but I will live with that. I can totally understand. So parting question to you, Anupam. Anupam, where do you see NCL going from here? Right. I think the initial years have been pretty fabulous. I know building an organization is a long process, and I think the first few steps we have taken very positively. Going forward, how do you see NCL shaping it up and complementing Indian agriculture and especially Indian farmers? I think which is at the heart of what NCL intends to do, and also how do we engage more with more economies to push after rice, right? Because I believe we are having so many of varieties, we are having so much of potential, but sometimes just long, medium, long, right? Those parameters, right, takes away the premium of some of the very, I would say, niche varieties India is having. Going forward, do you think that this is also an area where NCL would be working and to ensure that profit maximization, not just for NCL, but also our farmers?
We're working on that. We're talking to some countries which have not been buying rice from India so far. So NCL is focusing on those nations first where they have not been buyers, because I don't believe in competing in an already crowded market. Though I will compete because that is where the bulk of the commodity is going. But I will certainly reach out to those nations who have not been buying regularly from India on various accounts. I think we can fill in that gap for those countries which have not looked at India as a reliable source of supply of rice. I think we'll succeed in next. You will see some evidence over next a few quarters where we break those boundaries which has existed for quite some time. Coming to the your first part of the question is that how NCL is shaping, I mean, how NCL will scale its. So I think it's very easy for us to have a template because it has been handed out to us by our principal promoter Amul. So Amul has a 75-year long footprint. So we have been given to actually follow those footsteps and replicate it across other commodities using the same principles. So we have the template, but there's only small difference between the roadmap or the journey taken by Amul, that the dairy grew such a big cooperative because it was a protected sector from 1947 to 1996, whereas we are now competing with the multinationals, Indian transnationals in most of the commodities that we are entering, because now it's a time of laissez-faire and we are competing in a completely open to all market, while defending the farmers' interest and making a place for ourselves. The goal is much more gargantuan as compared to what the cooperative milk endeavors were to face in the first or the second century, second half of the last century. Whereas we are confident to compete in a existing environment in almost all commodities, because we believe that farmers will eventually see the argument of what we are doing. It's for them, with them, by them, and we will succeed in that direction.
Couldn't agree more with you, Anupam. Farmers are what you are responsible to, and farmer is what getting best benefit out of NCL's initiative. Congratulations, keep on doing the great work, make us proud, and I believe our farmers, maybe in next 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, will see better time just because of intervention of NCL and people like you who are having heart at the right place. I would put it that way. Thanks a lot, Anupam. It's a pleasure to have you on this session, sir.
Thank you, Deepak. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Perfect. So now we move to our next speaker from India. Let's go to another beautiful country, Indonesia. I always call Indonesia as my second home because I've worked extensively in Indonesia, traveled multiple islands. So I would say that all the these 6 or 7 large islands I've been on there. In fact, my first rice experience was in Indonesia when I myself did the farming there with the farmers in a beautiful place called Deli Serdang in North Sumatra. And I also have a badge of honor where actually, like, I chopped off my hand, right, with an axe while doing the harvesting. So with that, I would like to invite my next speaker, Dr. Sri Nurianti. She is an eminent agriculture economist and director for food security control at Indonesia's National Food Agency, Badan Pangan Nasional, representing Indonesia in a multilateral bodies like ASEAN Secretariat and APEC. She specializes in implementing national food security frameworks, price stabilization mechanisms, and agriculture early warning systems. Her expertise focuses on managing staple food reserves and balancing the economic welfare of rural producer with urban consumer affordability. Welcome, ma'am. Pleasure to have you on this session.
Thank you, Deepak, for hosting and inviting me on this session.
So I think you are presenting, so I would request your team to share the screen and let's go with the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Again, thank you, Deepak, for inviting and hosting the event, and thank you, Mr. Niraj, as the CEO of HnyB Incubation, for inviting and assisting me for the session. This season, I will share our experience on the global policy and also global and domestic market on our rice stock, rice price, and also import in 1 decade from 2016 and to 2026. Recently, we know that our production reaching the highest during 2 decades. Even in the long history, we reaching our self-sufficiency in rice. And from the graph, we know that our production in terms of rice has contracted in 2019, then decreased sharply around 8%, then stagnant during 2022 to 2025. Then after that, we reached the highest production in terms of dry harvested rice, also dried unhusked rice, and the rice itself, more than 34 million tons. So based on this, we could rebuild our rice reserve in 2026 highest, reaching 5.2 million tons. And we know after our production, our consumption, since we issued our presidential regulation number 82 2024 for the diversification of other than rice, our capital consumption per capita annually is decreasing from more than 90 kilogram per capita a year, less than that, reaching 87.2 kilogram per capita a year. This have so that decrease a big minus 4.3% from 2024 to 25. And based on this production and consumption level, we can see that the production consistently exceeded the consumption level. So from this term, we can rebuild our food reserve as our adaptation from the potential shock from the production and also the distribution term. As we are living in the global market, so we take the reference from the global rice price is Thailand, and we noted that in the recent years, our price gap from international price quite high, comparing to Thailand medium price, 25% broken, where our medium rice that categorized as the general rice, more than $700 for 1 ton, then for the Thailand rice less than $400 per million ton. This price gap will trigger big import if our country is not self-sufficient yet. And as can be seen from our graph, before 2025, we did importing from other countries, including India, some of this for the specific rice like Basmati. And for the food reserve, we only use for the general rice, these categories for the medium and premium rice quality. And during 2022 and 2024, only the food reserve only came from the import ones. Since the government established the National Medium Term for Planning Development Program, we say RPGMN 2025-2029 to achieve self-sufficiency in rice in 5 years. But thanks God, in 1 year we could achieve the self-sufficiency in terms of rice. In 2025, that the rice production reaching over than 34 million tons, and we could reserve for more than 5 million tons. Since we also the member of United Nations, we have committed to achieve the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. There is 3 goals that related to the food sector. These are the objective 1, 2, and also objective 12. In this objective, we then describe further into our RPGMN 2025 to 2029 that we want to reduce the poverty into 0 in the end of the medium-term planning program, and also on the hunger less than can be indicated from the poverty level also. And we also consider that building our food security and resilience and sovereignty is not that easy. We also have to consider the potential challenge of the national food development. We know that recently the population is also increased. Not only the quantity, we also have to fulfill the quality of the food that needed by the population. And we know that the geopolitics is also happening, the conflict in the Middle East and other parts. So we consider that some disruption in the logistics, including for the food, also can affect to our food security situation. And climate change is undoubtedly happening recently, including the Godzilla, El Nino, and including trigger to the food supply disruption for the new pests and disease that affect to our yield and production level. This can in long term has an impact on our food crisis. Therefore, in the national level, we also in depth considering our challenge, including the not robust technology and the aging of farmers. And we also have facing a very huge of food loss and waste. Every year we have some million tons of food wasted, not be consumed as the loss in the upstream level, and also not be produced properly at the upstream level and not be consumed in the downstream level. Therefore, in our medium-term development planning program, according to the President Regulation number 12/2025, we already cascade from the national program, we say program national, into 3 national program related to food. For the self-sufficiency is the national program number 2, hilirization or downstream program, and value-added process in the national program number 5. In those 2 support to the national program number 7 for the reformation to stabilize the food supply and also the prices. And National Food Agency as the one of the institution body in the government has 8 priority program related to the food, and the most important are to sustain and stabilize the food security level and status. These 7 priority activities are related and considered to support the to sustain and stabilize the food security situation. Therefore, some program we do, especially the first one, unless the food, especially for the staple food, you know that I have mentioned 87.2 kilogram per capita a year. One people in Indonesia consuming rice, so the self-sufficiency of rice is a must for Indonesia. And to rebuild our food reserve, we can use this to stabilize the 3 pillars of food security in terms of the availability, affordability, and the utilization itself. And if there is no shock in the production level and also distribution, we also can use the food reserve to boost or support the purchasing power of the extreme poor. And if there is a certain nutrition status that we have to support, so we can use the food reserve that already fortified for the nutrition like the vitamin 1, 9, 12, and zinc, and also ferrum. We use this to stabilize, to improve the nutrition level for the extreme poor and also had hidden hunger in our community. So in conclusion, self-sufficiency of the staple food is the most important for Indonesia, as we need to reserve our food to stabilize and sustain our food security status and level, and we can double our production in the future. Nowadays, our agency of the logistics manage more than 12% of total production. Before 2025, they only manage less than 10%, at most 7% of the total production. This all my presentation, Deepak. Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Sri. It was pleasure. Very, very extensive and nice presentation talking about the great work Indonesia is doing. I travel Indonesia twice every year, and I love the work being done by government of Indonesia, as well as the people are so kind and so good. One question before we part, Ibu, you have been part of ASEAN also. How do you see these multilateral organization trying to help the food security mission for the Southeast Asia? Because we also know that there are countries like Philippines, there are countries like Cambodia and Laos, where the food security is still not completely taken care of. How the ASEAN framework can help in ensuring food security, not just for Indonesia, but also to its regional allies. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Deepak, for the question. Actually, in terms of the food reserve, we can use for externally and also internally. For the internally, I already explained. For the externally, in case of Asian, when some request through the Asian Secretariat is coming through the office in Jakarta, so the Badan Pangan Nasional, our National Food Agency, will receive also the assignment from the Presidential Secretariat to release our reserve for the international food aid. Like we deploy to Palestine some tonnage of rice from our reserve to assist them from the hunger. This is for the scheme when we do for the regional or also the global term in terms of the food assistance, Deepak. So we can use our food reserve for our internal purposes and also the external purposes that I know we have done for the Palestine. We send some rice, 10,000, 1 million ton to Palestine in 2025. So in that mechanism, Asian, if they request through the Secretariat, we also can do this kind of mechanism as well.
Excellent, excellent, Dr. Sri. It is pleasure to have you on this session, and looking forward to meet you in Jakarta very soon. Terima
Welcome.
kasih.
Sama-sama. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, so now we move to our next speaker. So we have understood a very interesting aspect from two of our eminent speakers, right, on how important the food security is and how governments of two large nations, India and Indonesia, in the sector in this specific region, are trying to work on these specific lines of ensuring profitability to the farmers, at the same time ensuring the food security of not just our own nations, but the global south are taken care of. This also brings a very important aspect. You would be thinking that, like, I'm having speaker all across from different countries. Why the biggest player in the room, China, is missing? Frankly, if you ask me, like, getting Chinese speaker on an platform which is run by an Indian is pretty challenging. We tried our best to get China on board, especially for the rice, because we know for rice, maize, and wheat, and even soybean, they're a very important player. But unfortunately, all our efforts, were not sufficient enough to get them. Maybe next time we'll do it a little bit earlier, because I think they need a lot of clearances from their governments as well. That is what I was told. So my apologies not to have a Chinese speaker on this panel. With that, we move to another aspect, like, let's talk about innovations, right? While we have been talking a lot about the trade numbers, the food security, but until and unless we don't innovate, right, we will find that any amount of land which is, or any amount of water which is currently available, will not suffice going forward with the type of rise in population. The earnings of mid-income countries is increasing. The production is gonna to catch up with that demand. So with that, we have our next speaker, Sheetal Sharma. Sheetal, she is a PhD and is an accomplished agronomist and tech innovator, serving as head of innovations at RISE. Following a distinguished tenure as a senior soil scientist at the IRI, that is International Rice Research Institute, she specializes in the site-specific nutrient management, climate-smart farming architectures, and the creation of ICT-based digital decision support tools. Her core expertise centers on bridging soil science and digital innovation, empowering smallholders to optimize profitability while successfully accessing the global carbon credit market. It is pertinent to understand that rice industry has been predominantly run by some CGIAR institutes as well as local research institutions. Private players have not been that much in the play as they have been in maize or in soybean, or even to a certain extent in wheat. So with that, I would welcome Sheetal. Thanks a lot for joining this session, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Deepak and Neeraj, for inviting me to this exciting session. It was really good to listen to Dr. Shri around what Indonesia is aiming for. And we at RISE, we are working both in Vietnam and in Indonesia. So I think I'll bring that perspective actually on groundwork and around sustainability, why it is important and what we are doing around it. I think I'll start with rice, right? So rice feeds half of the world's population, and yet the people who are producing it, the millions of these smallholder farmers across Asia, still remain among the most vulnerable participants in this food system. At RISE, which is an agri-tech, we work with these smallholder rice farmers across Vietnam and Indonesia to reduce emissions, to improve the profitability, and to build the resilient rice production systems. This experience has reinforced, I think, one simple but a powerful lesson for us, and that is that the future of sustainable rice production will not be determined just by innovations, will not be determined just by the technologies that we as scientists develop, but it will be determined by our ability to make those technologies, those innovations profitable, practical, and scalable for farmers. So I think I'll talk about more on the sustainability paradox. We have been trying to reduce methane emission from rice. We know how to do it. We know which practices can help in reducing the methane emissions. We know how to optimize fertilizer use. We know how to reduce residue burning. We also know how to improve the water productivity. Yet, in my 17 to 20 years of experience working with the smallholder farmers in Southeast Asia and South Asia, we've seen that the adoption remains limited. Why? Mainly because these sustainability programs, these innovations that are brought in have been designed to more around the environmental outcomes rather than the farmer outcomes. At our company Rise, we have learned that farmers do not adopt practices because they can reduce emissions, but they adopt practices because they can reduce the risk, they can lower their cost, they can increase their income, and also improve resilience. And then the environment benefit, I think, follows. So I'll talk about, I think, 3 hurdles that we see for the adoption of these innovations. There have been a lot of innovations that we've seen lately. There have been drought-tolerant varieties, stress-tolerant varieties coming out from institutions like IRI and other national institutions. There is technologies which help in saving water. We have AWD. We have solutions for straw management to avoid straw burning. But still, we see a couple of hurdles which are restricting these innovations to be adopted, right? So the first hurdle which I see is that sustainability often creates cost before the benefits. If you have to include or introduce a new innovation to the farmers, it needs behavior change. And for the farmers to change their behavior, it's difficult because they have been following those practices from generations. There's also a lot of uncertainty when a new innovation is introduced. A farmer, like we talk about smallholder farmers, a farmer who has a farmland less than 1 hectare or even less, the perceived risk through the introduction of these new technologies can actually outweigh a potentially large future benefits. And this is why demonstration and proof of these innovations are very critical. At Rise, one of our most effective tools that we have established is the field demonstrations. So where the farmers can observe outcomes directly within their own communities. And nothing accelerates, I think, more adoption of a new technology by seeing a neighboring farmer getting more yield while using less water, while using lower cost of fertilizers, and also reducing the labor. The second hurdle, I think, which we can see is the monetization gap, right? The farmers often generate these environmental values, but they don't capture the economic value out of it. A farmer can reduce methane emissions. It creates climate benefits. They avoid residue burning. They create an air quality benefits. They improve the soil health. It creates the ecosystem benefits. And these benefits have not been translated into farmer income directly, right? This is one of the reasons we at Rise, we came into the carbon markets so that the benefits of these developing carbon markets can be shared with these smallholder farmers. And our project, the carbon project that we are building on, is based on a very simple principle that if a farmer are expected to deliver environmental outcomes, they should participate in the value that is generated from those outcomes. So carbon finance is not the entire solution for us. We have our core business, but it is important mechanism on how we align sustainability with the farmer incentives. It's very critical that we build these business models in order to ensure that these innovations, these technologies, they are sustainably adopted from season to season, right? And the third is the fragmentation of smallholder farmers. We know that we work in Southeast Asia, South Asia, India, except for like Punjab, Haryana, most of the Eastern India, Southeast India, where we work, Indonesia and Vietnam, probably not more in Vietnam, but Indonesia, they're very smallholder farmers, right? And there is an enormous challenge around training these smallholder farmers, traceability, verification, compliance, and even market access. So what we're doing is like for scaling a simple technology like alternate wetting and drying from pilot plots to thousands of hectares, what we have learned is that mere innovation or mere technology is not sufficient. The real challenge is actually building what combines, I think, the digital tools, local agronomist networks who can directly interact with the farmers, have more farmer engagement, more data collection, and also compliance monitoring. Scale only happens if all these come together. It won't happen just by generation of a new technology. So if we move from sustainability to profitability, we can actually see that these can be reinforced together. They don't have to be in separate buckets. In fact, actually, most of our effective climate smart practices generate economic benefit before the environmental benefits are even considered. So our prime objective is to benefit the farmer by providing them inputs on credit, by supporting them with good agriculture practices throughout the season, and then bringing in these innovations and technologies which provide the environmental benefits. Technologies like alternate wetting and drying, it's a main key technology which helps in methane reduction. But we increasingly describe it as a technology which helps in water productivity and profitability. Farmers who adopt AWD can reduce irrigation cost, lower the pumping expenses, and also improve water use efficiency while still maintaining the yields. We have enough literature published and that shows that AWD can have equal yields than the continuously flooded rice if done in a proper window, right? Safe AWD is followed. So methane reduction is a significant additional benefit, but the economic benefit is what drives the adoption. And that is
So
why...
Sheetal, I would just pause you here.
Yes, sure.
It was mesmerizing introduction which you have given, and very pertinent because luckily I have also had opportunity of working in the geographies you're talking about. In fact, if you have heard about, there is an institution known as ZIZ, which is this German not-for-profit organization.
Yes.
And in fact, we are having Ven, who has just joined, right? He headed SRP, and
Yes.
he's
I know why.
he's a legend. Yeah, he's a legend when we talk about sustainability. So I will try to draw your attention towards one project which is known as National Appropriate Mitigation Action (NAMA) in Thailand, right? And again supported by ZIZ with a lot of private and public sector partners. Being part of it. This is where I would like to draw your attention and the question, because as I said, I worked all across Asia. I'm from Indonesia to Thailand, Philippines, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos. And the challenge which I see is that the financing, right? That is the biggest elephant in the room. We can always tell a farmer that you'll become profitable. Sustainability is sexy, right? It will give you money, but that doesn't work that way on the ground, right? Somebody has to have the monetary war chest, right, upfront to drive. And then actually a project ends in 2 to 3 years, that money dries out and farmer goes back. And since 2015, I'm seeing those cycles repeated multiple times in multiple economies. How you think this can be changed in a manner where actually we see, I say, better output of whatever money is being put in? Because if you heard about, there is a project called Better Rice Initiative Asia, BRIA. It has version 1, version 2. So ERI, Phil Rice, everybody participated in that. But now if I go to same farmers, right, after 7 or 8 years, they are back to square one. They are doing exactly what they used to do into 2015. Maybe they're having a better seeds. They're paying more for the input for a very simple reason that give them financial benefit upfront, right? They know that if I use this fertilizer, which has been proven in my neighbor's field, right, my productivity will increase, I'll make more money. So how do you try to solve this challenge, right? Technology is one part of it, but how to ensure that we have money on the table? And COP28, I was speaker, and believe me, all those numbers given, I'm yet to see them coming on ground. Those billions are somewhere in the bank accounts, but not at least on the farms of Southeast Asia.
Very pertinent questions. And I know wine very well. We have worked together when I was in ERI, and I think when he was in SRP a lot. But to address your question, I think what need is when these projects are conceived, when these projects are implemented, we need to bring in the right blend of stakeholders. right? Not just the stakeholders who are bringing technologies, but also stakeholders which will ensure the sustainability of these practices being followed. And how that will be ensured is beyond the project period. So till the project, as you mentioned very rightly, the farmers adopt the practice because they are getting incentives during that period. Probably they're getting free inputs, etc. And they will ensure that all the practices that project wants them to adopt will be adopted, all sustainable practices. But once that project ends and they stop getting incentives, they'll go back to their business as usual. So how we can prevent is to bring in companies, I think private sector, who build business models around that, because it's profitable for the private sector, it's profitable then for the farmers. Just an example I could bring is like at Rice, we have a business model where we provide inputs and services to the farmers on credit. So they don't have to go to the money lenders to get money to buy inputs at the start of the season at a very high interest rate. Now, what that does is, once they are onboarded with us, once they're part of our business, we introduce a sustainable practice to them. We introduce AWT to them. We introduce nutrient management to them. And since they are part of our business, they are getting benefited through our business, they will adopt that practice. And for us, because it is business to us, we continue this process. It's season after season, it's repeated. And that enables farmers to keep adopting the practices. Now, moving down 1 season, 2 season, 3 season, when they already see the benefit of these sustainable practice, they're likely to keep adopting them, not like going back to the business as usual. And since they are with us in our portfolio, they are getting additional incentives, not for that sustainable practice, but just being a part of our business and for inputs and credit, they keep on maintaining that, right? So I think that's what sustains. And that's why it's critical to bring the right blend of stakeholders together in the project, including public-private partnership would be, I think, a key for that.
Perfect, Sheetal. Wish you all the best, and I think that's a great approach. And I know rice is like, a good rice is cooked slowly, right? You cannot rush it through. Same way, I think a good innovation and implementation in rice is a slow process, but you are onto it, and I think you are doing a great work. And congratulations for doing that, Sheetal. Looking forward to have more engagements with you. Maybe we can have a one-on-one podcast on this topic. This topic is also very close to my heart, having worked on this. I would say sustainable rice for a very long time, because I've seen the plight of the rice farmers. I've seen the ecological damage it can create. Rice itself is a crop which can lead to a lot of sustainability issues and environmental issues. So going forward, looking forward to more engagement. Thanks a lot for joining.
Thank you so much. And it was a pleasure joining. Yeah. All the best.
Thank you.
Bye.
Perfect. So now we move on to our next speaker. So we are having in-house one of the giants of the industry and someone who understands the rice trays better than none, Mr. Nitin Gupta. He's a seasoned agribusiness executive serving as a vice president and deputy country head for rice at Olam Agri India. He specializes in the large-scale supply chain procurement, international trade execution, and the implementation of climate-smart agriculture frameworks. His core expertise focuses on integrating technology into farming system to enhance producer resilience, optimize value chains, and minimize the carbon footprint of extensive rice cultivation across emerging global market. Along with that, for sure, also ensuring that there is right profitability in the business he's running. Welcome, Nitinji. It's a pleasure to have you on, sir.
Thank you, Deepakji. Thank you so much. And lovely to hear all the esteemed panelists, right from Anupam to Dr. Shri to Sheetal. I think a very, very diverse group, Deepakji, and a great insight so far. Would love to share my thoughts also on this topic, but this is very, very close to my heart.
Perfect. So Nitinji, let's get into the first question. We all know that today we are talking about the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is El Nino for rice for sure, because a crop which is so sensitive towards soil moisture and monsoons. How do you see going forward? Because now it is given, if you have heard, yesterday, the Secretary General of United Nations also warned the world that El Nino is here. and it is going to create huge challenges. It will lead to severe reduction in the production of the food. So given that context, going forward, how do you see the rice ecosystem evolving with El Nino right knocking on our doors?
Thank you, Deepak ji. I think Indian rice ecosystem or Indian agriculture is at a very critical juncture because we all are now staring towards El Nino, and there is now more than 82% probability that El Nino is going to hit this year's monsoon. And IMD has recently reduced their monsoon forecast from 92% to 90%, which is one of the lowest in the last 5-7 years. So definitely going to be a tough year for us. I think the answer lies in all the insights given by the esteemed panelists in the past. It's right from the farmers to the end consumer. So how can we go about growing a sustainable rice? I think that's going to be an answer for that, Deepak ji. But very important before that, I would just like to highlight a couple of points. So with this, coupled with the geopolitical tensions going around, I think the rice crop will have a very challenging time this year. So all the input costs, be it fertilizers, be it freight costs, be it insurance cost, packaging metal cost, so everything has gone up. And over and above, we might see some significant drop in the yields and overall production. Thankfully, India has a very sufficient stocks. We are sitting on a pile of rice stocks in the country, but that we have seen in the past also that one poor monsoon, and as you rightly mentioned at the beginning of the session, that all these stocks can go away because we have a large population to feed rice. So critical juncture, definitely a tough time for rice, but I think India is well positioned to overcome this challenge. We are sitting on a decent stocks right now. And second, very importantly, from a short-term point of view, I think India need to see that how can we navigate this whole climate challenge or this poor monsoon this year. So one is about the short duration crop, especially for farmers who are in the northern part of India, especially into Basmati. I think the answer lies into the short duration crop. The second is about the heat resistant or the drought resistant varieties. So I think government has done enough good work in the past couple of years, and there are varieties available in the market to the farmers which can be grown this year, and that can immediately led to a significant or downsizing the overall crop yield and production reduction, which we are talking about. So that's going to be a short-term answer for that. Long-term, I think, as Sheetal rightly mentioned, and as Olam, we are very clear that sustainability should be at the core of our heart. And we are running a couple of projects in India. One is a sustainable rice platform, which we are doing in India. We are one of the founder members of SRP. And plus now with ARI and GIZ, we are running a carbon offsetting program in India. So these are definitely the long-term answers for that, wherein we need to see, because rice is a water guzzling crop. We consume 3,500 to 4,000 liters of water to produce 1 kg of rice. So definitely we need to see that how can we not only reduce the water consumption, but reduce methane emission also, because that directly indirectly leads to methane emission as well. So very important from that point of view. So India has to now clearly see, and I think we talked about that the whole world talks about that India is dumping a subsidized rice across the globe. So it is not about just dumping that rice. It is about because we have a large population to feed in the country, and India is actually serving the whole world by supplying very economical rice, especially to the African countries, right? But at the same time, we need to see that how can we sustain to have 150 million ton kind of a production in India, and that too with available or limited resources. So that's some of the areas where we need to focus upon.
Nitinji, I totally agree with you. And in fact, yesterday I was having a good discussion with our peers in the United States of America. And US is also trying to push a lot of rice across different geographies. And they were very upset, and the word which you rightly said, dumping. I believe that dumping is not dumping. It is actually if I have excess, right? Why can't I feed my peers with that at a price point which is actually viable for me to do that? Definitely no trader would like to make a loss, right? They might not be very profitable, but at the same time, definitely they would not be burning their own pocket to feed someone else if they're in a private trade. But at the same time, if world is getting a little bit cheaper rice, not a big issue. But at the same time, we have also seen that whenever India is having large supply, which we are having currently, right, there is a turmoil across the globe because our peers in South Asia, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, they also struggle because their cost of production is pretty higher than actually what we see in India. And how do you see India's watches playing going forward on the global prices? Because if you have seen of late last month, prices has started moving pretty seriously upside from the floor which we have seen. And my view is that still there is a lot of gas left. And with El Nino on the door, the prices are at least $40 to $50 on the upside going forward here. How do you see the price outlook based on what the numbers you are seeing today?
So, I think I'm completely in sync with what you have just said, Deepak ji. The kind of prices which India has seen, especially in the first half of this year, I'm definitely seeing a contrary to that in the second half of this year. So I think because of El Nino, because of the other origination prices, India is definitely at a very, very discounted price today. And there is going to be a good demand coming in from most of the destination markets. So that will lead to a upsurge in the prices. So clearly where India is today, it's almost $200, $250 less than what we were almost 1.5 years back. So from here, I think India has a scope, and prices I'm clearly seeing to be bullish in the second half of 2026 calendar year, that prices from where they are today, non-Basmati, they will go for minimum $40 to $50 hike in the prices of non-Basmati varieties. Basmati, anyways, very elevated prices throughout the year. I see prices continue to remain firm, but it all depends that how new crop arrivals or sowing will happen in case of Basmati, and that will decide that how Basmati prices will go up. But for non-Basmati, there is no crop now before November, December, so we clearly see a bullish trend in non-Basmati prices.
So Nitinji, one more thing, as you rightly mentioned, in fact, if assuming that the geopolitical tensions are reduced over next 2 to 3 months and the logistic price comes down, insurance price come down, if based on our own models, we have came to the conclusion that around 450 to 460 US dollars is a fair price possibility, right, going forward. Do you see that actually that those are the prices we can see a possibility? Seeing that as well, because the balance sheet looks pretty messy of rice. If you look at a global balance sheet, right, we see close to 6 to 7 million shortages when we see demand versus supply. So the demand is definitely going to be 6 to 7 million metric tons more than the supply. And unlike wheat and maize, right, the war chest, global war chest are not that big. And if you see that out of that war chest also, if I just remove the Indian part of it, right, we are talking about 80 to 90 million metric tons only. And 10 to 15% shrinkage of that, could lead to some challenges. Historical trend says that, the prices are having a possibility of serious upside. Do you subscribe to that idea that there could be a possibility, a little bit more challenge going forward on the price points?
So I'll just give you a broad idea about the prices. So today, let's say non-Basmati, the majority of 60 to 65% of India's export is of parboiled rice, which is close to $330 today. Then comes the white rice complex, which is around 30-35%, wherein 25% white rice is close to $340 and 5% is close to $350 today. So clearly, and rest 5 to 7% is broken rice. So let's talk about parboiled and white rice. So in case parboiled price continue to remain at these prices, then a lot of white rice demand will start moving in towards parboiled, because parboiled is the cheapest non-Basmati available today amongst white rice and parboiled categories. So clearly parboiled is going to go up, and we are not seeing any further parboiled rice fresh crop coming in before November end or December of next year. So clearly parboiled price from 330 levels, I see if not 450, but definitely between 380 to $400, because Thailand is already at $400 plus levels, and there is no other country who serves parboiled. Now coming to white rice, India at 340, 355, again, it's very, very competitive. Other origins will also see their fresh crop coming in only in the month of October, November or December. So from here, 340 or 350 levels, I clearly see another $40, $50 upside in the white rice prices as well. So clearly an upside from where they are today, might not be to 450 levels, but definitely towards 400 for sure.
Oh, perfect. Now, so let's talk about something you are exceptional in, like in managing the cross-border supply chains. How do you see going forward for a trading organization like yours, possible risk, and where do you see to mitigate those risks, the steps you take to ensure that your margins are at least are consistent to what your philosophy would be?
We feel that global supply chains are very much interconnected now, and the live examples we have seen this year when this West Asia crisis happened. So just to give you an example, the freight which are hovering around $500 to Middle East. So overnight, shipping lines introduced a freight surcharge of $2,000 and prices zoomed from $500 to $2,500. So practically 5 times increase in the freight prices. And on top of it, insurance costs went up, the packaging metal costs went up. So these are clearly an indication that with all such turbulence or disruptions in the supply chain, anything can happen. Now, the only pair which has to remain relevant in this industry is about managing value chain end to end. So if you have a complete understanding or deeper presence at the origination as well as at the destination markets, only then you are going to survive, sustain, and remain profitable over a long period of time. Otherwise, it's going to be very challenging because it's a very dynamic, uncertain scenario right now, which we call it as a VUCA world, right? And that situation will continue to remain. If West Asia crisis goes away, something or other will definitely come up. So the whole world will see these kind of disruptions, at least in the next couple of years. I think India is well positioned, one, because we have multiple ports, unlike other origins like Pakistan, Thailand, and Myanmar, who are largely dependent on 1 or 2 ports. So India, one, has a large crop, multiple ports, and then a lot of arbitrage happens between these ports and multiple varieties which India can offer to the world. So if people have those kind of understanding at the origination side, second, at the destination, I think the other bigger challenge which we are seeing is that most of the countries now start looking for self-sufficiency. So this year, for the first time, at least in my career of 15 years in Olam, we have seen that a lot of countries have come up with some kind of regulations in terms of licensing, in terms of quota. So it started with Benin, then Senegal, then Burkina Faso. Now we are hearing that IVC can also come up with some kind of license or quota system. So clearly that's one challenge which is lying ahead, because Africa is the largest consuming nation for Indian non-Basmati varieties. But all said and done, that is going to take a long time. These all could be a short-term disruptions or bumps ahead, but definitely there is a bright future lies in a long-term point of view. So one who has a complete understanding about the value chain, right, from end to end, will definitely continue to remain relevant in the industry.
Nitinji, I totally agree with you. But frankly, if you see the experiences of Africa, we have seen actually some of the countries we are talking about, they are going the direction of what Nigeria did. Nigeria and like in West Africa, the borders are porous. So even like if there is a shortages, right, that the cargoes can move. But I have not seen that actually on the ground, the productivity increasing or acreage increasing to the level where it can be long-term solution. And end of the day, you have to feed people. And I think maybe the currency is also one of the challenges these countries are doing this. And maybe another 2 years down the line, we see that business would be as usual, because world is structured in a such way that some places will produce a product more than other. That's why the global trade is all about. If everybody start producing, India imports edible oil, India imports pulses, right? While we are looking at self-sufficiency, but if you do the self-sufficiency there, right, you will be compromising somewhere else. So you have finite land, finite resources, and then you grow whatever is more economic to you. The parting question to you, sir, going forward, how do you see the overall rice trade evolving? Are we looking to focus on more countries, as Anupam was talking about, or we think like, the same old countries which have been importing from India would continue to like, be the captive markets for us?
No, so Olam, our endeavor is always to continue to deepen our presence in the existing markets and look for new opportunities. And I think the way all these disruptions are happening, there are many countries which are now start looking towards India to start feeding them. And we would definitely be more than happy and excited to participate in all those new opportunities. So that's always the case with us.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Nitinji. It's always a pleasure to talking to you. And thanks a lot for joining and enlightening all of us with your extremely pertinent insights on the topic. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Deepak ji. Thank you.
So now we have our next speaker, again, a legend. So Wayne Ellis, he is a world-renowned sustainability pioneer and a senior consultant for the World Bank, famously recognized as the former executive director for the Sustainable Rice Platform, which he put a lot of effort to bring in right stakeholders. He specializes in public-private partnership development, climate resilient value chains, and designing international voluntary sustainability standards for agriculture. His global expertise centers on driving market transformations that reduces greenhouse gas emissions and conserve critical water resources within the intensive large-scale rice production system. Welcome, sir. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much, Deepak, and good morning, everybody. Real pleasure to be here.
So Wayne, straight away, how can international voluntary sustainable standards be rigorously enforced across the highly fragmented global rice production system? Because I think the standards has been there for a long time, and it's time that actually they are implemented.
Thank you. A really pertinent question, and I think it's a question that we have been struggling with at the SRP for since the outset, in fact. And I think we have made progress, but of course these are intractable issues and they're systemic issues. So I'll start with challenges. Of course, fragmentation is the elephant in the room here. With average farm size of around half a hectare across most of Asia, and obviously a lack of understanding and literacy levels places major obstacles in reaching farmers, in sharing knowledge with them, and in ensuring that they are, and in obviously in auditing and verifying progress. So the administrative complexity of dealing with a massive fragmentation has held things back considerably. The opportunity that we have, though, is really interesting. Even before we start talking about carbon, the opportunity lies, I believe, and you may say I would say this, but I do believe that multi-stakeholder collaboration is essential if we are to achieve this, and a candid acknowledgement of what can be achieved by different partners. Now, Sheetal, lovely to see you, Sheetal, and I agree with what you've been saying. It has been very important that to establish partnerships and platforms that can provide a full service to farmers instead of allowing these projects to perpetually remain in pilot status. Deepak mentioned the NAMA projects, and this is very, very true. We had a project in Thailand where the Thai rice NAMA involved a revolving fund, which requires farmers to pay for services. Now, I warned that this would probably be unlikely to succeed because farmers in Thailand have been used to receiving such services for free under the rice pledging scheme. When that pledging scheme ended, the revolving fund worked for a little while the project was supporting it, but as soon as the subsidies ended, as Deepak has observed, there was no uptake. And so you have to have these kinds of platforms, and I salute RISE for their innovation in this regard, so that we can establish a viable business model that incentivizes farmers to participate. Now let's turn to carbon for a moment. I've been looking at this since I left SRP last year. I've been with the World Bank on a program in Vietnam, and it seems that the cost of MRV for carbon verification is really high. It can be up to 40% of total costs. So the cost of proving a change is much higher than the cost of actually delivering that change in the first place. So we have to recognize the need to move the costs of MRV away from the farmer and the first aggregator, perhaps to the state. And these are perhaps quite radical ideas, but unbundling carbon programs could lead to quite significant opportunity and flexibility. If the state, for example, were to assume the costs and manage MRV, then it becomes a lot. It really reduces the burden on farmers and on first aggregators and first buyers. So in short, if we want rigorous enforcement, we have to stop taxing the farmer for the cost of proving it. And we must deploy satellite verification to handle the scale and leverage the value chain to finance the transition. But going back to the original question, we need viable business models that incentivize farmers, and RISE is a good example of input-led input-led platforms that deliver this and keep farmers coming back and deliver them with just basic improvements in their net farm incomes. Thanks.
Yeah, excellent, Wayne. Actually, I totally agree with you, on the observation and with the type of experience you are having, unparalleled in the world. I think this is the way forward. And that also brings me a very important, pertinent question. When we talk about climate resilient value chains, right, how do we build so that actually to incentivize the farmers eventually to conserve the water resources or reduce the methane? Because that is, I think, a missing piece still, right, when we are trying to, or when we are struggling to ensure that the standards are followed.
Yeah, again, a great question. I think we have to go back to first principles here. Let's ground this in reality. Farmer's not a project developer. The farmer is a person with a pump and a rice calendar. If we want them to conserve critical water resources, we really have to stop offering them financial instruments that are misaligned with how they actually farm. So right now, for example, the voluntary market expects farmers to change their water management practices and adopt AWD, for example, shoulder the upfront costs, and then maybe wait 12 or 24 months for a carbon credit to issue before they see any payment. And that is before we consider distributional impacts. So that is not an incentive exactly. This is a financing gap that either prevents action entirely or allows intermediaries to extract the value. So to build value chains that actually incentivize farmers, we need to fundamentally restructure the financial architecture. For example, we could pay for practices, not verified tons. Now, this is heretical when we talk about the voluntary carbon market, because we've been moving towards verification or towards empirical measurement rather than use practice as proxy. So governments don't need extremely detailed, accurate measurements of emission mitigations in order to deliver incentive payments. And that's the key thing that allows the opportunity to pay for practices to serve as a trigger for payment of incentives. We need empirical verification for other reasons, but not for that purpose. And that's, I think, the key distinction here. So we probably could change to supply chain insetting rather than offsetting. We could, as I mentioned in my earlier remarks, leverage the opportunity provided by the reducing costs of MRV to make scaling practices more viable. And also, we need to look beyond international donors, which have been largely subsidizing carbon schemes over the last few years, so that we could perhaps look at other mechanisms beyond the VCM to drive incentive payments. For example, I have not heard, and I may have missed this dialogue completely, I haven't heard any conversation about using carbon tax to fund incentive payments to farmers. So you can see I'm actually pointing towards radical systemic change rather than tweaking a voluntary carbon market, which was essentially designed for forest systems, not for fragmented rice systems. But ultimately, it means to build a climate resilient value chain means we stop pushing the cost of measurement down to the base of the pyramid. So I'm calling for the state and the buyer to handle the measurement so that the farmer can simply be paid to manage the water and receive incentives accordingly.
Excellent, When. So when you touch upon very important part of financing being a critical missing piece as well. Now, multilateral agencies like World Bank, how do you see them actually bankrolling a little bit more? I've seen that the one thing is donor fund, but when IFCs or World Bank get involved, they see it in a structural, in a longer manner, financing such project. How do you see that actually? Are they struggling, or do you think it's a lack of interest from the global majors to work on sustainability, which is not getting the right sort of financing? To finance a war, we can give a $1.5 trillion, but to finance sustainability, $1.5 million become a challenge. How do we solve this problem, sir?
So I think there's a bit of mission shift going on, actually, Deepak. If I'm honest, and I think what we've seen over the last couple of years is having enjoyed an increase in interest, in global interest amongst the international community in sustainability, not just in rice but in other crops as well. What we've seen, and I'm sure colleagues will have seen this as well, we've seen a shift in focus towards what we call low carbon rice or low emission rice. I think I worry about this because the subliminal message of that shift is that low emission rice is equivalent or interchangeable with sustainable rice. I think I challenge that distinction because it blurs the lines, blurring the lines between sustainability and low emission rice, low carbon rice is a dangerous oversimplification. So to put it bluntly, low emission rice is a single environmental metric, while sustainability is a much broader holistic system. The scope of impact is different. And of course, low emission initiatives miss out completely unless they are explicitly added on social equity concerns. So carbon metrics are entirely agnostic to human rights, labor rights, children's rights, safe working conditions, and so on. So I think it gives an opportunity, an opt-out when you talk about low emission rice or low carbon rice from the obligations that weighed heavily on the SRP, for example, as we developed a sustainability standard in the early years. Questions of social equity, labor rights, children's rights, and so on were very much uppermost in our minds, principally because, aside from private sector partners, we also had non-government partners, civil society partners, to keep us balanced in our approach. And that's a really important thing. So I see the shift in global emphasis towards low emission interventions rather than sustainability interventions as worrying, because it allows donors to oversimplify what they do and maybe just pick a couple of other additional metrics on nutrition management, for example, and claim essentially that this is sustainable. I think it's very sorry, hang on a second. Yeah. So there's a barrier here to answer your question in terms of definitions, because there has not been a clear and so far a clear and unequivocal definition of what we mean by low carbon rice or low emission rice. This is still contested territory. So I think there's a definitional question here, and it must be resolved if we are not to throw the baby out with the bathwater and ensure that farmers are being addressed, are being targeted in a holistic way. So that I think is probably, and given the money that international development organizations are throwing at low emission rice at the moment in their donor programs, I think it's very important that these be implemented holistically.
Thanks a lot, Wayne. Actually, I would say very pertinent advisory, right? And I think this is where the direction we have to move. And coming from you, expert like you, I think this is what the world should be moving forward to. Thanks a lot, Wayne, for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on this webinar. Thank you a lot, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, so now we move to our next speaker. So we are having a strategic business leader, Mr. Rajesh Paharia. He's currently served as the Chief Manager of Development at Kripco Agribusiness Limited, and a key figure in national cooperative and a key figure in the overall government-driven procurement mechanism globally. He specializes in facilitating global market entry and managing large-scale export operations for agriculture cooperatives, focusing on rice, sugar, and other commodities where Indian farmers are having plenty. His expertise lies in cross-border logistics, navigating export quotas, and driving cooperative competitiveness across the region. Hello, Rajesh Bhai. How are you, sir? Rajesh Bhai, if you're speaking, you are on mute, and would request you to start your video. I think there is some connection issues with Mr. Rajesh Paharia. Neeraj, can we go with Ayushi then?
Yeah, we can go. I'm trying to reach out to him. Just a minute.
Okay.
Hello.
Hey, hi, Ayushi. Good to see you. Rajesh Bhai seems to be on trading call. Hi, Rajesh ji. Good to see you, sir. I've already introduced you and looking forward to have your intervention. You are on mute, sir. I think still.
Yeah, now it is working. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Some system
No.
error was there.
No, not an issue, sir. Technology always sometimes
Yeah.
play little bit of games. So, sir, actually, I would like to understand from you, you being regularly involved in rice trade extensively. Sir, how do you see, the market unfolding going forward, especially when it comes to, the India's high availability or what people call glut at the same time? Now we are seeing the prices are moving a little bit up, especially because of the pressure from Thailand and Vietnam. Do you see the prices improving going forward?
Deepak Bhai, first of all, thank you for organizing such a wonderful show on rice, especially. And this is a high time that we all need to upgrade and update each other. That what is the current scenario and what we need to do for our next two phases of the shipments and the planning for the execution and at the destination also. See, just before El Nino, we were all saying that the stocks of rice, which are with the FCI, are on a very negative sign for the economically. But with post El Nino, I think it has become a blessing in disguise for India at the moment. So far as I see, that we are already holding around, say, 3x times of the stocks which are in buffer with us. But unfortunately, other competitors like Thailand, Pakistan, Myanmar, and Vietnam and Cambodia, they don't have that carryover stocks with them. So with us, it has become a possibility that we will maintain the number of the exports, which we are going to continue. Prices certainly we will be gaining a little bit because a lot of input cost has gone up. Fertilizer cost has gone up. Diesel prices, crude prices have gone up. The freight market has gone up. So certainly the prices benefit will be coming down to India. And and at the bottom, we have the rupee depreciation, which is going to give us a benefit also.
Sorry, I was on mute. So perfect, sir. Actually, now, as you rightly said, in the hind, see, that's the beauty of this government, right? They are so lucky that irrespective of whatever policy decision they make, eventually it works in their favor. And the war chest is definitely ensuring that we don't have any crisis, which we are seeing some part of the world where inflationary pressure could be very high. Now, when we talk about on the very specific part of going forward, El Nino. Now, El Nino is already we've seen United Nations Secretary General also talking about it as a big problem. Going forward, do you see that the serious increase in the price points? Because if I see the global supply and demand, I'm seeing a shortfall of close to 5 to 8 million metric tons. We are having the global, I would say, carryover, which is shortest in the last 6 years. And out of that, a substantial part is Indian, which is for buffer and for, I don't think government would be very keen to liquidating it in hurry. Based on that scenario, do you see that there is a possibility of a sharp upside in rice markets? We have already seen last month the prices pretty decently moving up.
Deepak Bhai, we have seen in the last month itself when we already were having the war geopolitical scenarios and the crude prices which were going high, we have not seen that hike in the rice prices specifically. But in last 15 to 20 days, when this end of the war is not visible to anyone, the prices have gone up by $15 to $20 almost. Because of the major reason, one of the major reason was the freight. Domestic prices has been very slightly up, but major issue was with the freight also. The containers freight, the vessel freight has gone up drastically from $50 to $70 almost. And I feel that this will continue, the scenario will continue, and I'm sure that the benefit will be going to India, and we will maintain the similar number of the exports, 21 to 22 million ton. Basmati will always be a little problematic here, but for sure, for non-Basmati, there will not be any hitch, and the numbers will be achieved accordingly.
Rajesh, we are also seeing that protectionism coming in some of the countries, right, of late. Especially in Africa, we are seeing that like in a lot of countries, they are trying to protect their own farmers or they're restricting the imports. How do you see that panning out? Is it a short-term phenomena, or do you think that it can extend to like, a longer duration, or it becomes structural?
Let me be honest with you, I was in Africa last week, and I visited 3 of the countries, and I was very clear about all the policies. It's all short term. It's all short term. Whether you talk about Benin, or you talk about Burkina Faso, or you talk about Senegal making a quota, they all have the different stories. Like quota to the restricted importers, it is a revenue generation. Certainly, they have the policy that they have to procure the cargo from their local farmers also. It's very minimal in comparison to what the production is. Say if I talk about Senegal, they import around 1.2 million ton of broken rice, but comparatively they procure only 150,000 ton of the local production, which is very high. So comparatively, it is just the 10%. It's a meager amount quantity. Secondly, Burkina, the similar situation. They import around, say, 550,000 tons annually, or almost a 600,000 ton annually. And their local production, the paddy which is lying with them, is only 200,000 ton. So technically, it will be giving only 120,000 ton. So accordingly, what the problem with the Benin is completely different. In Benin, it is a transit. Major cargo is going to Burkina, Chad, Niger, and Nigeria, unofficially and officially both. So that is a completely different story. They just want to generate more and more tax revenue. So that policy will continue. But all other countries, for supporting their own farmers, and they will not be able to feed their own people, will be difficult. And I feel very strongly that this is just a temporary phenomena, and this will continue in order to support them. Nigeria, again, is a complete different story. Their cost of production is very high in comparison to Indian or any other origin. So what they are doing their logistics cost, they produce in the Kano zone, and they can cater to their only location, that is a central Nigeria. The East Nigeria, which is near to Benin, the West Nigeria, which is near to Cameroon and other places, that trade will continue. So certainly they are trying to put some restriction. The major issue about the restriction is the forex also, because a lot of exchequer is going out. Foreign currency is a big crisis there. Even the buyers, they say today, you take the money in the local currency, but we cannot do that, and the transfer of that local currency to India or to any other destination is a difficult task.
Perfect. Rajesh, your understanding of the micro markets is exceptional. Like, hats off to you for the work that you're doing, right? It's such a clarity you have on the markets you work in. Now, I will take you to another market in which you are having extreme level of expertise, Bangladesh. Do you see Bangladesh, like, now we are having a government which is, I would say, geopolitically more aligned with, like, our current government. Do you see even that business picking up or going forward?
See, Bangladesh is a next door neighbor. So it is always say neighbor's envy and owner's pride. So we can always say that what may, you cannot ignore Bangladesh, and Bangladesh cannot ignore you, whatever the geopolitical scenario it can be. Last time during the season 25-26, they have floated 10 tenders, and out of the 10 tenders, only 2 tenders were belonging to some foreign national, and all 8 other tenders were belonging to Indian exporters. All 8 have been executed. Only 2 tenders which were taken by the local domestic person was not executed. Price war was there. There was a huge cut among all the exporters who were the tender participants. So we have undercut each other. Coming season on 14th June, there is a meeting there is a budget meeting where the quota will be declared. Then another 1.4 million ton will be imported. Out of that 1.4 million ton, Bangladesh will be doing around 200,000 ton G2G with Southeast Asia. It will be Myanmar, Vietnam. And then another 200,000 ton, they will be doing it with India and Pakistan. So quantity, they have to decide it. And rest, 1 million ton, I'm 100% confident. Out of that, 500,000 ton will be through the tendering process, and 500,000 ton will be through their domestic procurement, which is indirectly exported from India by the quotas, by the private importers, and the local delivery is being given. So Bangladesh will continue as it is. They have no option apart from India to be dependent on rice, and major consumption is a rice. Their production of high value, their Zoha variety has increased. They are going to release the quota for their for their premium variety of non-Basmati. And for the non-Basmati, they will be always dependent on India.
Last question, Rajesh Bhai. Now we have already talked about the global south. Let's go a little bit north. How do you see, like, because yesterday I was talking to, like, our peers in the US, and they say that even after the bilateral trade treaty between India and US, the tariffs on rice would increase, not decrease. And that is what the industry there is pushing for. That's $330 million worth of business. Do you see and especially for our Basmati and, like, high cost varieties, do you see that that is going to be impacting us much?
Absolutely, Deepak Bhai. What is happening? Like, if you talk about the American side, so majorly we are doing almost $1,000 per ton quantity. We are doing it, whether it is a pure Basmati or whether it is a premium non-Basmati, that is Sona Masuri, Jeera Kasala, Govind Bhog, and all those, which we were trading at around, say, $600. Last year we traded at $900 C&F. So the tariff increases, their prices will also increase. Certainly, this quality is going only for the two purposes. One is for the expat Indians, and secondly, it is going for the commercial use in the restaurants and other things. So the prices for this particular variety, if they increase the tariff, the effect will be to their own inflation. So they need to keep particularly the staples out of this particular subject. And during our last session also, we had a brief discussion on the tariff, which is going to be affecting everything. So I'm 100% confident. Some or other, how we all know, the war has already escalated the crisis in the entire Middle East. The containers which was destined for, say, Saudi, have been dumped in Oman. So again, the cost is getting increased. We are facing a lot of turbulences for transporting or recalling those containers. Certainly, Basmati, which we were doing almost 5 to 6 million tons, will have a hit because of the Middle East crisis. And for the for the American market, I don't find a big move will be there, because Basmati is around 100,000 ton and 200,000 ton is a semi-premium Basmati, a non-Basmati rice.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Rajesh Bhai. And I know you are going through a lot of challenges because of the West Asia crisis, right? And a lot of containers from Indian rice exporters are stuck, and, like, you don't know when the pressure is gonna go away. So in these difficult times, I think El Nino is also an area which we all have to keep an eye on. With that, thanks a lot, Rajesh Bhai, and thanks a lot for always supporting us. And
one more addition to this. Sir, we are just missing one subject, that is called fertilizer.
Okay. Please.
Which is going to be more fatal than the El Nino.
Rajesh Bhai, one more thing, like, I was doing some calculation, like, because we are into the role of advisories, right? And advisors get paid more when the actually total volumes in terms of dollar is more. And you'll be surprised, one tender of fertilizer by IPL, right? It was equivalent to the total import of pulses in India. So a lot of people told me that, Deepak, you are on the wrong side of the commodity. Focus more on fertilizer, you'll make more money. And I think that's becoming a reality. Like, irrespective of what government says, right? I see serious challenges in availability, because going forward, I think we have sufficient but not good enough to take care of all the requirement. Do you agree with that?
The next season will be little tough for all the fertilizer companies to make the distribution, to make the availability and everything. It will be a real hard nut to be broken. And since El Nino will be an icing on the cake, and our coming season, I'm more worried about the Rabi season, which is going to be there.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Rajesh Bhai, for bringing this very pertinent and important point of fertilizers. Maybe we can have one special session someday on fertilizer, because I think it becoming a real challenge going forward.
Yeah. Thank you, Deepak Bhai.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. So now we go to our last speaker in the room, and we are having Ayushi Baloni. She's an expert region analyst serving as the associate price reporter for the agriculture and food sector at S&P Global Commodity Insights. Based in India, she is responsible for driving daily price discovery and providing independent, transparent benchmarks for the rice and grain market across PAC region. Her expertise include monitoring ground-level trade signals, analyzing localized port logistics, and tracking regulatory policy shift to deliver high integrity data to the global market participant. A very difficult task, Ayushi, you are executing flawlessly. Congratulations for doing that. I think you are having a presentation to make.
No, I think I'll first, probably speak because,
Sure, please.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sir Deepak. It's been a pleasure to, be here, and finally I get to speak with you. So that's good good to be here. So yeah, we can continue. But
Perfect.
also just to note that I think prior to my years of experience with looking at rice prices and other commodities, I was also working around rice sustainability projects. So I think just listening to Sir Win speak, or Sheetal ma'am speak, or Mr. Nitin speak as well, I think it just took me back there too. But yeah, I mean, would love to continue the conversation.
No, so beauty here, Ayushi, is that actually whenever I set up sessions, right, and in fact this is seventh, right? We did three yesterday, 3 day before yesterday. I try to have a multiple perspective, right? It shouldn't just become like what you see on TV debates. तेजी आएगी कि मंदी आएगी, right? I go beyond that, because at the end of the day, we believe ourselves to be someone who is trying to set the narrative for the ecosystem rather than just like, playing with whatever the narrative is there. So that was the reason actually, if you could see that, like, there was a strong focus on sustainability, there was strong focus on geopolitics, and definitely like, supply and demand are part of the game. So let me get into my first question to you. With the physical rice market being notoriously opaque and fragmented, what specific ground level trade signals give you the earliest and the most reliable indication of a regional price breakout? Because this is where the traders are struggling today, right? There are so much of noise, so much of information. And as I said, like, sitting in front of a TV and listening to a debate based on your own position, you would say, Teji hai, mandi hai. A lot of people will say that when I'm saying that the prices are going to move up, maybe I'm in position. By the way, I don't take positions at all. But like, that is a mindset based on your positions, like, people talk. But how do you see on the ground the signals a trader should be ready to hear?
Yes, thank you for the question, sir. I think that sets a good context. I'll first, address the first part of the statement when you said that rice markets are opaque, and like they are notoriously opaque and fragmented. And yes, to some extent, I agree. That's been the case. But I also feel like, in the past couple of years, especially with rising uncertainty and a lot of things, deviating from the norms, like how they used to happen. Rice used to be a traditional market, but the sense that I get from the market increasingly in the past couple of years is that, one is that the notion that rice markets are opaque and fragmented. Fragmented is a different ballgame altogether. But I feel in terms of opacity around markets across the globe, I feel like it's getting better. Why I say this is because when I speak with market participants across the board, whether it be exporters or, buyers or even traders, brokers, because they also get to have a lot of touch points at the same time, I feel like there is almost a hunger for, credible information. Like, because there's so much information floating around, and especially with things happening not just in the regional markets, but also something happening, kilometers away from you or seas away from you is literally affecting your local prices and, how you get your, raw materials and their accessibility. I feel like this is now the time. I would say in terms of, just the knowledge of it, it's a transitional time for rice markets where, everybody seeks credible information rather than just information. And when I heard, Mr. Rajesh Pahadia, sir, also speak, I think the clarity that he has when he is there in the market, I think the credibility of that information speaks volumes for itself than just, following a trend. Because one thing that I have seen in the markets recently is also that, it's very speculative and sentiment based. at this point. Why? This is because, rather than solely looking at what is regionally happening at the micro level, we are also very, very largely, like the traders especially, are largely influenced by the narratives. So I think when the narratives become better informed, they become more credible. That is when, everybody across the supply chain is able to make better decisions. Now, just to get to the part where you asked about the regional price indicators, or, just flows that we see in the market. Yes, it is true that, you know, um, any significant price change or any significant change in the trajectory of the prices in the past couple of months, we have seen that the market behavior on the ground reflects it first. There are a couple of things that I can say, I have seen consistently, give me good signs of the fact that something is brewing, something is about to happen. One is definitely the core of prices, that is the bids and offers and the variance between the two. I mean, in a generally, you know, I would say inactive, not even inactive, but a slightly cautious market, the bid and offer variance is pretty high because, as it makes sense, the buyers, they are not willing to, they are still waiting and watching, and the sellers, they know that, it would not be a good idea to sell at really low levels because they speculate a certain trend upcoming. So I think whenever the bid offer variance is too high, that is one very good indicator that, sorry, when it's too low. When it's too high, then the market is usually very cautious. Trades are going to happen in a limited quantity. But when the gap, narrows, that is when you see, okay, now the market is, starting to negotiate on prices. Or when a supplier suddenly starts getting really aggressive, that is when you see, okay, there is a buyer in the market, and, you probably have some potential for activity. Other than that, I feel a couple of other things. One, speculation also I mentioned. Whenever rice markets are generally spot, right, and people do not trade on very, very forward or future shipments. But in some cases, I have seen this happen, and that is probably only when, a buyer is about to enter or a buyer has started inquiring. Um, and that is when, sellers, even in this uncertain situation, some big risk takers, they probably want to secure a sale. It does catch them back later sometimes because the market has been crazy past couple of months especially. But I think a lot of these, small indicators, bid offer variance, the traded volumes, or, even just the fact that how sellers are approaching their sales, whether they are making forward sales, all of these things definitely, help us understand the price better.
Ayushi, now I would say the elephant in the room. How do you see supply and demand panning out and its implication on the prices? Where do you see prices? Are you looking at upside, downside? Are you worried about El Nino? Or you are worried about India's oversupply? What are those market trends according to you?
Yeah. So I think just to set context, I think Nitin sir and Pahadia sir already set context for what the prices look like right now. And that's definitely true. Platts is assessing prices at multi-year highs for almost all regions. However, India is definitely at a big discount to all the other origins. And Thailand and Vietnam, due to their limited availability at this time, they're trying to cover for their previous shipments. The difference is huge, but still, even when India is at a such particularly low level, the demand side is still very cautious, or maybe they are buying in staggered volumes. The forecasts, Platts is generally not, we don't assess prices, but our analytics wing, which is the Sera wing, they definitely assess a rise in prices to some extent for the upcoming time. And at least in terms of forecast, this is where they see the market bullish, that's for sure. But as Platts price reporters, I think we rather focus on the major supply and demand watch points that affect these prices. One is definitely the supply side of it. That is El Nino. I think El Nino, when you look at the data, when you look at the forecasts, even our teams make from the analytics end, there is a slight reduction in production and yields. Yes, that's true. But it does not exceed more than 3 to 4% as of now for almost all regions. It's almost stable. And given the fact that the leader in the rice markets, India, already has a good amount of stocks available, I think more than El Nino, it's the logistical disruptions that are affecting buyers the most, especially from, if you look at all the Western buyers, there are 2 points. One is that freight is definitely an issue, and that is causing a lot of West African buyers to either temporarily close or maybe just be very cautious and make staggered sales. But it's not that their demand is going to vanish in thin air, right? They will keep on consuming rice. The other is that a lot of trades may also, especially to the Middle Eastern nations, because we assess Pakistan markets also. And there are a lot of trades that might go unreported because they are through probably via land routes, or, they are not being, they are not going through the usual shipping ports, the traditional routes. So that also definitely is a data point that we miss, which validates the point for more credible and transparent on ground information. But the fact is that trades are happening. It's They have been disrupted a lot, but it's not like the demand will vanish. From the demand side, I think buyers are becoming more and more, I would say, smarter. They are trying to diversify a lot as well, because Philippines, for example, in recent couple of weeks only, Philippines usually buys from Vietnam, and they prefer some varieties from Vietnam. But given how prices have changed, across the board, and availability issues in their closer counterparts, they are looking to other regions which they don't like. They are looking to India, Pakistan, because they sensed, that it's because they wanted that stocks, but they were not able to get it from their traditional sellers. So I think they are becoming smarter. They are diversifying. This is for the Far East ones. China, I think it's an opportunistic buyer for sure. So I think now that prices are on the upside, they are probably less likely to be, more interested in, and their production stats are also good as always. So I think it's a delicate balance of this, both these, but the prices are definitely looking, firm for the time. But it's not just El Nino. That's my major point.
Perfect, perfect. Ayushi, thanks a lot for very insightful intervention. I totally agree with you that different markets and different origins, as well as different buyers and traders, think differently and act differently. And thank you for confirming the firm bias, which all of the speakers today have been talking about, and looking forward to have more engagement with you. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir.
Perfect. So with that, we come to end of this very interesting and insightful session on rice Asia Pacific. As you know that this is the third day of Commodity Week World 2026. We are having two more sessions lined up for today. The one is at 9 a.m. GMT, where we'll be talking about how CEOs are thinking the current scenario in the CEO's corner. That's 2:30 p.m. India time. The third session of the day would be at 9 a.m. New York time or 6:30 p.m. India time, which would be touching on very important aspect, the agri-logistic and agri-technology, where we are having some of, I would say, young, energetic speaker who have been making a difference, either through technology or through their intervention in the logistic. Looking forward to see you again. 9 a.m. GMT or 2:30 p.m. India time. Thank you. Signing off, your moderator, Deepak Pareek. Thank you.